A sterile millionaire is saved by a beggar considered ugly. One unexpected night he sleeps with her and disappears. Months later, she reappears pregnant with triplets. His. The man who couldn't have children is now faced with a shocking miracle. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. The clock struck 3 in the morning when William Thompson left his office in the penthouse of the most imposing building in New York. His footsteps echoed through the empty halls of the empire he had built. Thompson Technologies, the company that revolutionized the tech market in the United States and Latin America. At 42, he was a man who had everything money could buy, yet he carried a void no bank account could fill. As he entered his triplex penthouse in the Upper East Side, he found Elizabeth, his wife, sitting in the dark of the living room. The heavy tension that had surrounded them for months felt even thicker that night. In her hands, she held the results of yet another failed fertility treatment. "How you'll never give me a child," her words cut through the silence like razors. "What kind of man are you, William? You can't even do this right." The businessman remained silent, her words piercing deep into his core. After 5 years of attempts, consultations with the best specialists in the world, and outrageously expensive experimental treatments, the diagnosis of infertility weighed like a final sentence. "Elizabeth, we can explore other options. There are so many children who need a home," he tried to argue, but his voice betrayed the exhaustion of a years-long debate. "Other options?" She laughed bitterly. "I don't want other options, William. I want your child, your blood. But you can't give me that, can you? The great William Thompson, the billionaire who has everything, can't do the one thing that truly matters." The daily humiliations had become routine. Their marriage, once a partnership of triumphs and understanding, had turned into an arena of veiled accusations and contemptuous glances. Elizabeth, who once admired and supported him, now seemed to take pleasure in belittling him, as if his inability to father a child made him less worthy of respect. The next morning, William woke to the sound of slamming doors and suitcases being dragged. Elizabeth was leaving only a letter on the coffee table. The words inside were like poison, accusations, insults, and the confirmation that she could no longer stay married to half a man. The divorce scandal dominated headlines for weeks. The press speculated about the reasons, but William remained silent, protecting not only his privacy but also the last shred of dignity he had left. To the outside world, he was still the same business titan, the visionary who turned everything he touched into gold. But inside, something had shattered beyond repair. Unable to bear the emptiness of the apartment he once shared with Elizabeth, William retreated to his beach house in a secluded area of New York's northern coast. There, between the sound of the waves and the silence of walls that didn't judge him, he tried to piece together the fragments of his shattered self-esteem. The days dragged on in a lonely routine. Board meetings and important company decisions were conducted via video conference. His only human contact was with the staff who maintained the estate, and even then, it was strictly limited to what was necessary. One particularly difficult afternoon, when the memories and cruel words of Elizabeth felt heavier than usual, William decided to take his jet ski. The cloudy sky and choppy sea should have warned him of the danger, but at that moment, the internal chaos consuming him outweighed any concern for safety. He sped toward the horizon, as if he could leave behind not just the shore but also the weight he carried. The biting wind against his face and the roar of the engine were welcome. Anything was better than the deafening silence of his thoughts. Then, miles from shore, the engine began to fail. The fuel had run out. William found himself adrift under a relentless sun that now broke through the clouds. His attempts to use his cell phone were futile. There was no signal at that distance from the shore. The hours crawled by as the waves pushed him farther out to sea. Thirst began to torture him, and the scorching heat made his head throb. His strength left his body gradually as dark thoughts flooded his mind. Perhaps this was the fate he deserved, to disappear silently, taking with him all the shame and frustration that consumed him. As consciousness began to slip away, William caught one last glimpse of the blue sky above, feeling the waves rock his body like a cruel cradle. The world darkened, and he surrendered to the cold embrace of the sea. Fate, however, had other plans. The next morning, a lone figure walked along the deserted beach. Eleanor, as she was called, combed the sand for anything she could sell or eat. Her long, tangled hair partially covered her face, and her worn clothes betrayed her life as a homeless woman. But her bright green eyes held a story few knew. Years ago, Eleanor had been a promising medical student. Intelligent and dedicated, she was in her final year of school when her life fell apart. A falsified medical records scheme at the university hospital where she interned unjustly implicated her. Though innocent, she was expelled, and her name was tarnished so badly she could never resume her studies or find decent work again. That morning, something caught her attention among the waves, a motionless body carried by the tide. Without hesitation, Eleanor rushed into the water. Years of life on the streets hadn't erased her instincts as a rescuer. With a strength she didn't know she had, she dragged the unconscious man to her makeshift shelter, a flimsy structure of tarps and scavenged wood. Carefully, she checked his vitals. The man was alive, but severely dehydrated. Using a water bottle, she treasured like gold, she began to hydrate him slowly. Her hands, calloused from a hard life, moved with the precision of someone who once dreamed of saving lives. When William finally opened his eyes, he found himself in a place he could never have imagined. The smell of salt water mixed with the scent of old wood and canvas. Through the cracks in the makeshift ceiling, rays of sunlight created curious patterns on the sandy floor. But what struck him most were the green eyes watching him with genuine concern. Where am I?" His voice came out hoarse. "Safe," Eleanor replied, offering him more water. "I found you on the beach this morning. You were severely dehydrated." William tried to sit up, but dizziness forced him back. Eleanor steadied him with firm yet gentle hands. "Easy," she advised. "Your body is still recovering." In the days that followed, William remained in Eleanor's shelter, regaining his strength. He watched, fascinated, as this woman, who had nothing, cared for him with such dignity and knowledge. She cleaned his wounds with seawater, applied seaweed compresses to reduce inflammation, and checked his vitals with the regularity of a professional. At night, when the beach grew colder, they talked. Eleanor never asked who he was, and William never revealed his true identity. There, stripped of his status and wealth, he was simply a man being cared for by another human being. No ulterior motives, no hidden agendas. One evening, as they shared coffee brewed in an improvised tin can, Eleanor told her story. The way she spoke about medicine, her eyes lighting up as she explained procedures and terminology, revealed a passion that even years of hardship hadn't extinguished. Night fell over the beach, and the approaching storm made the air thick and electric. William and Eleanor took shelter under the makeshift structure as the wind howled through the gaps in the canvas. The forced closeness created an intimate, almost magical atmosphere. "How did you learn so much about medicine?" William asked, watching Eleanor prepare tea with herbs she'd gathered earlier. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, her eyes fixed on the small fire warming them. "I was in my final year of med school when everything fell apart," she began, her voice heavy with painful memories. "I was one of the top students, you know. There was even an offer for a residency at a renowned hospital." Nathaniel listened intently, sensing for the first time the depth of pain behind those green eyes. Eleanor continued her story, describing how she was falsely accused of participating in a scheme to falsify medical records at the university hospital. "They never found out who was really behind it," she sighed. "In a matter of days, I lost everything. My reputation, my dreams, my dignity. No one wanted to hear me out. No one believed in my innocence. The rain grew heavier outside, but inside the shelter something stronger than the storm was unfolding." Nathaniel felt his heart tighten with each of her words. How could fate be so cruel to someone who only wanted to do good? "I tried to start over in other cities," Eleanor went on, "but the scandal followed me. Little by little, I lost everything. The money ran out, my friends disappeared, and before I knew it, the streets became my home." A particularly loud clap of thunder made the structure tremble. Instinctively, Eleanor moved closer to Nathaniel, and without thinking, he wrapped his arms around her. The warmth of human contact, something both had been deprived of for so long, was comforting. "But you haven't lost your knowledge," Nathaniel observed softly, "nor your compassion. Even after everything you've been through, you still help people." Eleanor smiled sadly. "It's the only thing they couldn't take from me. Here on the beach, I care for other homeless people, injured fishermen, anyone in need. I don't have equipment or medicine, but I do what I can with what nature provides." The storm raged outside, but inside the shelter a deep connection was forming. Two wounded souls finding comfort in each other. Nathaniel realized he had never felt so genuine, so human, as he did in that moment. "You know what's most ironic?" Eleanor continued, her eyes reflecting the flames of the small fire. "Even after all these years, I still dream of medicine. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking I'm on duty at the hospital." Nathaniel watched her, amazed by her inner strength. This woman, whom society had discarded as invisible, carried within her a treasure of knowledge and humanity that many so-called successful people would never possess. The night deepened, and the closeness between them grew. There was something magnetic in the air, a chemistry impossible to ignore. William found himself admiring Eleanor's delicate features, partially illuminated by the fire. Behind the weariness of life on the streets, there was a natural beauty, a dignity no adversity could erase. Eleanor, in turn, felt strangely comfortable with this mysterious man. There was something in his eyes, a mix of strength and vulnerability that intrigued her. He didn't treat her with the disdain or pity she was used to. In his gaze, she found respect and genuine interest. "Why were you out at sea that day?" she finally asked, breaking a long silence. William felt his heart race. How could he explain the despair that had driven him to that moment? How could he reveal his own wounds without exposing his true identity? "I was running away," he answered simply. "From myself, maybe, or from a life that no longer made sense." Eleanor nodded, understanding that feeling all too well. She too had tried to escape her reality, though in different ways. A new thunderclap boomed, and the rain grew even heavier. Eleanor stood to check if the tarp was secure, but tripped over a piece of wood. William caught her before she fell, and their faces came dangerously close. Time seemed to freeze. The noise of the storm faded, and all that existed was that moment. That electric connection between two souls, fate had brought together in the most unlikely way. Dawn brought with it the clarity of a night that would forever change both their lives. William and Eleanor had surrendered to a moment of passion, as intense as it was unexpected. The warmth of their bodies and the sincerity of their souls forged a bond that transcended their different social realities. As the sun rose on the horizon, William watched Eleanor sleeping. Her hair, though tousled, framed her face with a natural beauty no artifice could replicate. His heart was torn between the peace he felt there and the awareness that he had to return to his own world. His phone, miraculously preserved in a waterproof pouch, began buzzing relentlessly as soon as it caught a signal. Dozens of missed calls and messages from his team, frantic over his disappearance. Thompson Technologies was facing a crisis that demanded his immediate presence. Eleanor woke up to the sound of notifications. Her eyes met William's and a shy smile lit up her face, but she quickly noticed the change in his expression. "You have to go, don't you?" she asked softly, no accusation in her voice. William nodded, the weight of reality settling on his shoulders. "Yes," he replied regretfully, "but I want to help you before I leave. I can arrange a place for you to stay, resources to start over." Eleanor stood up, straightening her simple clothes with dignity. "You don't have to do that. I didn't save you expecting anything in return." "I know," William insisted, stepping closer. "But you deserve a chance to rebuild your life. Let me help." From the pocket of his still damp shorts, he pulled out a card with his personal number and a stack of bills. Eleanor looked at the money with a mix of hesitation and wounded pride. "Please," William pleaded, placing the card and money in her hands. "If you need anything, reach out to me, promise?" Eleanor tucked the card away, but her gaze revealed she didn't truly believe in that promise. She'd met wealthy people before, those who offered help in the heat of the moment, but disappeared as soon as they returned to their privileged world. William called a rideshare and waited by the roadside. Before leaving, he turned back to the shelter one last time. Eleanor had her back to him, organizing her few belongings as if to keep herself busy and avoid thinking about the goodbye. "Eleanor," he called gently. She turned, and William saw unshed tears in her green eyes. Wordlessly, he pulled her into a tight hug, trying to convey in that gesture everything he couldn't put into words. "Thank you for saving my life," he whispered in her ear. "For showing me that there's still true kindness in this world." Eleanor hugged him back, allowing herself one last moment of vulnerability. "Thank you for making me feel seen again," she replied quietly. The sound of the car horn shattered the moment. William stepped back reluctantly, committing to memory every detail of that extraordinary woman fate had placed in his path. As the car pulled away down the dirt road, William glanced in the rearview mirror. Eleanor remained still on the beach, her solitary silhouette against the sea. Something inside him screamed to turn back, to not leave her there, but the responsibilities of his life pulled him with inexorable force. Back in civilization, William threw himself into his obligations. The company demanded his full attention to overcome the crisis, and the weeks blurred into a haze of meetings, decisions, and negotiations. Yet his thoughts constantly drifted back to those days on the beach, to the simplicity of the canvas shelter, and most of all, to the green eyes that had seen into his soul. Every night before bed, he gazed at the ocean through the windows of his penthouse, wondering how Eleanor was doing. He had left instructions with his team to assist her immediately if she called, but the phone remained silent. The card with her number, like his promises, seemed to have been carried away by the wind. A month after his return, William was in his office at Thomson Technologies when his secretary hurried in. An emergency at the beach house required his immediate presence. Someone had broken into the property. During the drive, his thoughts inevitably turned to Eleanor. Did she still frequent that beach? Had she used the money he left to start over somewhere else? The unanswered questions tormented him. When he arrived at the property, he found 2 security guards restraining a struggling woman. His heart stopped. When he recognized Eleanor, she was even thinner, paler, and her clothes looked more worn than before. "Let her go," William ordered, rushing toward her. The guards immediately complied, surprised by their boss's reaction. Eleanor staggered, and William caught her before she fell. Her body was feverish, and she could barely keep her eyes open. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice weak. "I didn't know where else to go." "Shh, it's okay," William reassured her, carrying her into the house. "You're safe now." In the days that followed, William personally cared for Eleanor, repaying the kindness she had shown him in the past. He called the best doctors, who diagnosed her with severe pneumonia, worsened by weeks of exposure to the cold and poor nutrition. During her recovery, Eleanor revealed that she had tried to use the money William left to rent a simple room in the city, but was scammed by the landlord, who disappeared with the advance payment. With no other options, she returned to the beach, only to find her shelter destroyed by a storm. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" William asked, holding her hand as she received IV fluids. "I didn't believe your offer was genuine," she admitted, lowering her eyes. "People like you make promises all the time to people like me. They rarely keep them." The honesty of her answer hit William like a punch. How many times had he himself made empty promises just to keep up appearances? As Eleanor regained her strength, William spent more and more time at the beach house, managing the company remotely. He watched in awe as she recovered not just her health, but also her self-esteem. With proper meals and basic care, her natural beauty began to bloom again. One afternoon, as they walked along the beach, Eleanor suddenly felt ill. Dizziness and nausea made her stagger. William immediately took her to the nearest hospital, fearing a relapse of pneumonia. After a series of tests, the doctor called Eleanor in for a private conversation. William waited anxiously in the lobby, his heart tight with worry. When she stepped out of the office, her face was pale and her hands trembled. "What's wrong?" William asked, gripping her shoulders. "Is it serious?" Eleanor looked at him, her green eyes brimming with tears. I'm pregnant, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And that's not all, that it's triplets. William felt the world spin. Triplets? How was that possible? He was sterile. All the tests over the years had confirmed it. His mind raced, frantically searching for explanations. Are you sure? He asked, his voice hoarse. Eleanor nodded, handing him the ultrasound. There they were, clearly visible, 3 tiny hearts beating in unison. I'll understand if you don't want to, Eleanor began, but William cut her off, pulling her into a tight embrace. Don't even finish that sentence, he said firmly. We're in this together, all 5 of us. That night, after settling Eleanor into one of the bedrooms, William locked himself in his office. His hands shook as he dialed the number of his most trusted private investigator. He needed to understand how this was possible. Years of tests indicating infertility couldn't be wrong. The investigator got to work immediately, digging into William's medical history. At first, everything seemed normal. The same reports, the same devastating conclusions. But something caught the investigator's attention. Small inconsistencies in the dates, minor details that didn't quite add up. As the investigation unfolded, William devoted himself entirely to Eleanor and the high-risk pregnancy. He arranged for the best specialists in multiple births, converted one of the rooms in the house into a small medical monitoring station, and hired a nursing team to care for her around the clock. Eleanor, initially uncomfortable with all the luxury and attention, gradually allowed herself to be looked after. Her medical training helped her understand the importance of every procedure, every vitamin, every restriction. During appointments, she surprised doctors with her technical knowledge, asking precise questions about the baby's development. One morning, as William attended a video conference in his office, the investigator called with urgent news. He needed to meet in person. William cancelled all his appointments for the day and flew to New York immediately. You need to see this, the investigator said, spreading documents across the table. All of your original test results were tampered with. William felt his blood run cold. What do you mean, tampered with? I managed to track down the original reports, the investigator explained, pointing to different documents. You were never infertile. Someone systematically altered all your results over the years. The revelation hit William like a bolt of lightning. His hands trembled as he examined the evidence, altered dates, manipulated results, everything meticulously planned to convince him of his infertility. Who would do this, he asked, more to himself than to the investigator. Well, the man hesitated, pulling out another file. We found a series of emails exchanged between your ex-wife Elizabeth and the lab. William felt his stomach twist. Elizabeth, the woman who had humiliated him for years over his supposed infertility, was the one who fabricated this lie. The investigator continued presenting evidence, suspicious payments, veiled threats to lab employees, a complex web of manipulation spanning years. Elizabeth had orchestrated it all as part of a larger plan. There's one more thing, the investigator said hesitantly. We discovered she was in frequent contact with Nathaniel Carter. William's blood boiled at the name of his former business partner. Nathaniel had been his college friend, practically a brother. Together they founded Thompson Technologies, but 3 years earlier, William had removed him from the company after uncovering financial irregularities. What kind of contact? He asked, dreading the answer. Intimate, the investigator replied, handing him more photos and documents. They've been involved for at least 5 years. 5 years. The same period Elizabeth had started pressuring him about infertility. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, forming a disturbing picture. Back at the beach house, William found Eleanor sleeping peacefully, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, the first signs of her pregnancy. The sight of her, so serene and pure, clashed violently with the web of lies he had just uncovered. He sat on the porch watching the night sea, the same sea that had nearly taken him weeks before. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had to nearly lose everything to realize he had never lost anything. He wasn't less of a man. He wasn't incapable. He had been the victim of a cruel scheme orchestrated by those he trusted most. His thoughts were interrupted by a faint moan from the bedroom. Eleanor was having a nightmare, murmuring disconnected words. William rushed to her side, holding her hand until she calmed down. Gazing at her sleeping face, he made a decision. The past of lies was over. It was time to build a future based on truth, no matter how painful it might be. Thompson Technologies was in chaos that morning. Rumors of a hostile takeover attempt circulated through the halls, and stock prices plummeted on the exchange. William, connected via video conference from his beach house, tried to soothe the board's nerves. "We need you here in New York," insisted Richard, the CFO. "The situation is spiraling out of control." William looked through the window of his makeshift office, where he could see Eleanor walking in the garden, her 4-month belly already quite visible. "I can't leave the beach right now," he replied firmly. "We'll have to handle this remotely." What William didn't know was that, at that very moment, Elizabeth and Nathaniel were meeting with key company shareholders at an upscale restaurant in New York. The plan they had crafted for years was finally entering its final phase. "William is emotionally unstable," Elizabeth argued with the investors. "First the divorce, then the jet ski incident, and now he's living at the beach with a pregnant homeless woman. The company needs steadier leadership." Nathaniel, dressed in an impeccable suit, backed her up with carefully manipulated data and charts. Thompson Technologies could be worth 3 times more under proper management. William has lost his grip on the business. Meanwhile, at the beach house, Eleanor faced her own battles. The multiple pregnancy had complications, her blood pressure was consistently high, and doctors had detected a potential heart issue in one of the babies. "We need to run more tests," explained Dr. Harrison, the high-risk pregnancy specialist. "The middle baby has an anomaly that requires special attention." Eleanor, with her medical training, understood the gravity of the situation perfectly. At night, when she thought William was asleep, she cried silently, stroking her belly and whispering words of encouragement to her children. One afternoon, while William was in yet another tense meeting, Eleanor received an unexpected visitor. An elegant woman around 60 years old stood at the front gate. "My name is Beatrice," she introduced herself. "I volunteer at a social project and—" "Eleanor, is that really you?" Eleanor felt her heart race. Beatrice had been her professor in medical school, one of the few who believed in her innocence during the scandal. "Professor Beatrice?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. "How did you find me?" The two women embraced emotionally. Beatrice explained that she had never stopped, searching for evidence to prove her former student's innocence. "Eleanor, we've discovered something important about what happened in medical school. The falsification scheme, as we have proof of who was really behind it." At that moment, William stepped out of his meeting and found the two women talking on the terrace. He watched intrigued as Eleanor seemed both agitated and relieved. "William," Eleanor called, tears in her eyes. "This is Professor Beatrice. She has information about what happened to me in medical school." Beatrice greeted William formally, unaware of his true identity, and began to explain. The medical record falsification scheme had been orchestrated by a group of influential doctors from the university hospital. Eleanor had been chosen as the scapegoat after uncovering irregularities in clinical research. "We have documents, witnesses, everything," Beatrice stated. "Eleanor, you can clear your name. You can practice medicine again." The news was like a ray of light after years of darkness. Eleanor, overwhelmed with emotion, had to sit down. William held her hand, offering silent support. However, the joy of the moment was interrupted by William's phone. It was his private accountant with alarming news. Someone was making massive transfers from the company's accounts to offshore tax havens. William spent the night wide awake, trying to trace the disappearing funds. Each discovery left him more stunned. The transfers had been authorized with passwords and protocols that only 3 people in the company had access to: himself, Nathaniel, and Elizabeth, who still had system access due to contractual loopholes from the divorce. Eleanor found him, still in the office at dawn, his red eyes fixed on the computer screen. "You need to rest," she said softly, placing a cup of tea beside him. "I can't," he replied, running his hands over his tired face. "They're trying to destroy me, Eleanor. Not just me, but everything I've built." At that moment, his phone buzzed with a message from Richard. Emergency board meeting called for today. CEO attendance mandatory, in person. William looked at Eleanor, the conflict clear on his face. She gently stroked his cheek. Go, she said. I'll be right here with the medical team. A few days apart won't kill us. The trip to New York was tense. Along the way, William received more troubling news. Compromising documents about his management had been leaked to the press. Accusations of overbilling, irregular contracts, all carefully fabricated to appear true. When he arrived at Thomson Technologies headquarters, the atmosphere was heavy. Employees avoided his gaze, whispering in corners. In the boardroom, the faces were grim. William, the board chairman, began, "The accusations are very serious. We need a temporary leave for investigation." "It's a setup," William argued, presenting the evidence he had gathered about the suspicious transfers. But for every piece of evidence he showed, the board had a counter-argument, clearly prepared in advance. Midway through the meeting, Elizabeth entered the room, elegant as ever, followed by Nathaniel. The smiles on their faces were barely concealed. Triumph. "The board should know," Elizabeth announced, "that William is in no emotional state to lead. He's living with a homeless pregnant woman, abandoned the company." "Don't you dare speak about Eleanor," William interrupted, his voice trembling with anger. "Not after what you've done to me for years, Elizabeth. The lies about my infertility, the manipulation." A murmur spread through the room. Elizabeth paled slightly but maintained her composure. Nathaniel stepped forward, taking control of the situation. "See," he said softly, "William is clearly disturbed. We need to protect the company." The vote was swift and painful. William was temporarily removed as CEO, and his personal accounts were frozen for investigation. Nathaniel would assume the role of interim president. As he left the boardroom, William received a call that made his blood run cold. It was the head nurse of the team caring for Eleanor. "Mr. Thompson," her voice was tense, "Mrs. Eleanor has started having premature contractions. Her blood pressure is dangerously high and the middle baby is in distress. We need to take her to the hospital immediately." William felt the world spin. Ahead of him, Elizabeth and Nathaniel quietly celebrated their victory. Behind him, years of hard work and dedication crumbled. And miles away, the woman who had given meaning to his life desperately needed him. "I'm on my way," he replied, his voice steady despite the inner chaos. Turning one last time to Elizabeth and Nathaniel, he simply said, "You may have taken the company from me, but you won't take what truly matters." In the elevator descending to the ground floor, William made two calls, one to his trusted lawyer ordering immediate legal action, and another to his private pilot, demanding the helicopter be ready in 15 minutes. The helicopter cut through the sky at full speed as William stayed in constant contact with the medical team via phone. Eleanor had been transferred to St. Clair's Hospital, the best in the region for high-risk pregnancies. The contractions had been stabilized, but the situation remained delicate. "The second baby's heartbeat is irregular," Dr. Harrison reported over the speaker. "We need to perform emergency surgery to correct a placental circulation issue." William's heart tightened. "Do whatever it takes. Money is no object." "Mr. Thompson," the doctor's voice hesitated. "Your accounts, they've all been frozen. The key hospital needs guarantees to perform the procedure." The realization hit him like a punch. Elizabeth and Nathaniel had thought of everything. Not only had they pushed him out of the company, but they'd also cut off his access to funds right when he needed them most. "Put me on speaker with Eleanor," requested William, his mind racing for alternatives. "William," her voice was weak, but still carried that inner strength that had impressed him from their very first meeting. "I'm on my way, my love. Stay strong. The babies need you to be strong." "I'm scared," she admitted, and the vulnerability in her voice broke his heart. "What will happen if—" "No," he interrupted. "Nothing will happen. Trust me." Hanging up the phone, William made a call he never imagined he'd have to make. The number was still etched in his memory, even though he hadn't used it in years. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered on the third ring. "Sophia, it's William. I need your help." Sophia was his older sister, They had drifted apart years ago when she chose a simple life away from the city, rejecting the corporate world William had embraced. Now, she was his only hope. "Little brother," the surprise in her voice was evident. "It's been so long." "Sophia, I don't have time to explain everything. I need you to use your house as collateral for a medical procedure. It's a matter of life or—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Sophia, a pediatrician, had always had a heart of gold. "Send me the hospital documents. I'll take care of it right away." When the helicopter finally landed on the hospital's helipad, William ran through the halls as if his own life depended on it. He found Eleanor being prepped for surgery, her pale face contrasting with the white sheets. "You came," she whispered, a small smile lighting up her tired face. "I'll always come," he replied, holding her hand. "I'll always be here." "Doctor?" Harrison approached. "Mr. Thompson, we've received the collateral. We'll begin the procedure now." William kissed Eleanor's forehead before they took her away. "I'll be back soon," she promised, her green eyes gleaming with determination. The next few hours were the longest of his life. William alternated between pacing nervously down the hallway and making calls, trying to sort out the financial situation. His lawyer had secured a partial injunction, but the process to unfreeze the accounts would take days. In the middle of the afternoon, a familiar figure appeared in the hospital corridor. Sophia, his sister, walked toward him. Without a word, she hugged her younger brother as she hadn't done in years. "Tell me everything," she urged, guiding him to the benches in the hospital chapel. "From the beginning." And there, while waiting for news about the surgery, William opened his heart to his sister. He told her about Elizabeth, about the lies, about finding Eleanor on the beach. Sophia listened intently, her eyes filling with tears at times. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Dr. Harrison finally appeared in the waiting room, his face exhausted but with a faint smile. "We've managed to stabilize the placental circulation," he announced. "But we discovered something during the procedure that I need to discuss with you." William and Sophia followed the doctor to his office. The words that followed changed everything. "The middle baby has a rare condition," the doctor explained. "He'll need a bone marrow transplant shortly after birth. We need to start searching for compatible donors immediately." Sophia, with her medical background, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "What's our time frame?" "The transplant must be done within the first few weeks of life," Dr. Harrison replied, "and finding a compatible donor could take months." William felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Without access to his accounts, how could he fund an international donor search? How could he ensure the best treatment for his son? "I can get tested for compatibility," Sophia offered immediately, "and I can reach out to my network in the medical field." In the days that followed, as Eleanor recovered, a full-scale task force took shape. Sophia practically moved into the hospital, coordinating the donor search and overseeing her sister-in-law's care. One afternoon, while reviewing the first compatibility test results, Sophia made a startling discovery. She called William into the hallway, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. "Little brother, you need to see this," she said, showing him a folder of test results. "We found a compatible donor." William's heart raced. Who? Nathaniel Carter. The T. Name struck William like lightning. Nathaniel, his former business partner, the man who was destroying his company, was a match for his unborn son. "There must be other donors," William said, his voice trembling with restrained anger. Sophia shook her head. "The compatibility is nearly perfect, William. The chances of finding another donor like this are slim." The moral dilemma before him was devastating. How could he ask for help from the man who was actively trying to destroy him? How could he place his son's fate in the hands of someone who had betrayed him so deeply? Eleanor, upon hearing the news, gripped William's hand tightly. "Sometimes the universe puts us in impossible situations to teach us something," she said softly. That night, William spent hours in the hospital chapel, wrestling with his convictions. The image of the baby's ultrasound, so small, yet already facing so many battles, wouldn't leave his mind. Sophia found him there in the early hours. "You know," she began, sitting beside him, When you chose the corporate world and I chose medicine, I thought our paths would never cross again. But look at us now, united by something far greater than money or status." William looked at his sister, realizing how much he had missed her wisdom over the years. "How do I ask for help from someone who's trying to destroy me?" "Don't think about him," Sophia replied. "Think about your son. Sometimes the greatest act of love is swallowing your pride for the sake of someone you love." The next morning, William asked his lawyer to reach out to Nathaniel. The response came faster than expected. Nathaniel agreed to be the donor, but he had conditions. He wanted a private meeting with William, no lawyers, no witnesses. The meeting was set at a discreet cafe in downtown New York. William arrived first, choosing a table at the back of the establishment. His hands trembled slightly as he waited, not from fear but from a contained anger he had to control. Nathaniel entered right on time, dressed in an impeccable Italian suit. His face bore that same smug smile William knew so well from their college days. He sat down without ceremony, ordering an espresso from the waiter. "Long time, old friend?" Nathaniel began, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Let's get straight to the point," William cut in. "What are your conditions?" Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, studying his former friend with interest. "You know, William, I've always admired your directness, but today I'm not here to talk business. I'm here to talk about Elizabeth." William's stomach twisted at the mention of his ex-wife's name. "What's wrong with her?" "She's pregnant," Nathaniel announced, his smile widening. "And yes, the child is mine." The revelation hit William like a punch, not because of the betrayal itself. He already knew about their relationship, but because of fate's cruel irony. Elizabeth, who had tortured him for years with the issue of infertility, was now expecting a child with his greatest rival. "Congratulations," he replied dryly. "But that doesn't answer my question about your conditions for being a donor." Nathaniel leaned forward, his mask of cordiality slipping. "I want you to permanently resign as president of Thompson Technologies. Not just a temporary leave, a complete and irrevocable resignation." William felt his blood boil. "You're using my son's life as bargaining chips?" "I'm offering a solution that benefits everyone," Nathaniel replied smoothly. "Your son gets the transplant he needs, and the company remains in capable hands. Everyone wins." "Everyone wins?" William repeated, his voice trembling with indignation. "You and Elizabeth have manipulated my life for years. You falsified tests, lied about my infertility, and now you want to take the company I built from me?" Nathaniel took a sip of his coffee, unfazed. "The choice is yours, William. Your company or your son. What's worth more?" William stood abruptly, his hands braced on the table. "You haven't changed a bit since college, Nathaniel. You're still the same manipulator I knew back then." "On the contrary," Nathaniel smiled, "I've changed a lot. I've learned that sometimes we need to be cruel to get what we want. Elizabeth taught me that." "Elizabeth?" William let out a bitter laugh. "You two truly deserve each other. I'm sure your new companion has her qualities too," Nathaniel taunted, "though I doubt she can offer the same status as Elizabeth." William had to summon every ounce of self-control not to react to the provocation. The image of Eleanor in the hospital, her strength, despite all the adversity, helped him stay calm. "How long do I have to decide?" he finally asked. "To 4 hours," Nathaniel replied, standing up. "The resignation papers are already prepared. You just need to sign." As he watched Nathaniel leave the cafe, William felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The company was his life, his legacy. But what value did any of it hold compared to his son's life? He returned to the hospital in silence, his mind a storm of thoughts. He found Sophia in the hallway, speaking with Dr. Harrison about Eleanor's latest test results. "How did it go?" Sophia asked, immediately noticing her brother's troubled expression. William recounted the conversation, each word seeming to scrape his throat. Sophia listened silently, her trained medical face betraying no emotion. Sophia heard the whole story in silence, her expression gradually shifting from concern to determination. When William finished, she grabbed her phone and made a quick call. "Dr. Mendez, it's Sophia. I need an urgent favor. William watched intrigued as his sister spoke in medical terms he barely understood. When she hung up, there was a new gleam in her eyes. "There's another option," she announced. "Doctor, Mendez is working on a new procedure for collecting stem cells from the umbilical cord. If we can get approval for an experimental procedure, we could use the cells from the other two babies to treat their brother." Hope flared in William's chest, but it was quickly replaced by concern. "Is it safe?" "There are risks, like with any procedure," Sophia admitted, "but Dr. Mendez is a pioneer in this technique, and more importantly, we wouldn't have to rely on Nathaniel." At that moment, Eleanor woke from her nap. Her sharp green eyes immediately caught the tension in the air. "What happened?" she asked, adjusting herself in the hospital bed. William and Sophia explained the situation, Nathaniel's blackmail and the possible alternative. Eleanor listened carefully, her hand instinctively resting on her belly, where the triplets grew. "No," she said firmly. "We're not risking two babies' lives with an experimental procedure, and you're not giving up your company." "Eleanor, it's not that simple." "Yes, it is," she interrupted. "Nathaniel is bluffing. He won't refuse the donation when the time comes." "How can you be so sure?" William asked, surprised by her conviction. "Because," Eleanor explained, "no human being can carry that kind of guilt. Denying a transplant to a child? Not even Nathaniel would go that far." Sophia smiled, admiring the wisdom of the woman her brother had found in such an unlikely way. "She's right, William. And there's more. Elizabeth is pregnant. Do you really think she'd want to be associated with someone who refused to help a baby?" William's mind raced. Elizabeth could be many things, but she always cared about her public image. And now, expecting a child, she would be even more sensitive to issues involving children. "We need to change the game," he finally said. "Instead of reacting to their threats, let's take the initiative." With Sophia's help, William crafted a plan. First, he called a press conference, not to attack Elizabeth or Nathaniel, but to announce the creation of a foundation focused on research for rare diseases in newborns. The story moved the nation. The businessman who, upon learning his unborn son would need a transplant, decided to use his influence to help other families in the same situation. Professor Beatrice, who had uncovered the truth about Eleanor's past, was also pivotal. She organized an event at the medical school where Eleanor was publicly vindicated. The story of the wronged doctor, who even while living on the streets never stopped helping others, went viral on social media. The plan worked better than they expected. Public opinion turned entirely in favor of William and Eleanor. Investors began questioning the legitimacy of William's removal from Thomson Technologies. And most importantly, Elizabeth started publicly distancing herself from Nathaniel's actions. The impact of William's actions was immediate. Social media overflowed with messages of support, and major news outlets competed for exclusive interviews. The story of the businessman who abandoned his pursuit of power to dedicate himself to humanitarian causes touched the public's heart. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Eleanor received an unexpected visitor. A woman around 70 years old, dressed simply with tired eyes, paused at the door of the room. "My daughter." The trembling voice broke the silence. Eleanor felt her heart stop. It was her mother, Margaret, whom she hadn't seen in over 10 years. The last time they met was right after the scandal at the university, when shame and despair had torn the family apart. "Mom?" Eleanor whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How did you find me?" "I saw your story on TV," Margaret replied, stepping forward hesitantly. "My Eleanor, a doctor. I always knew you were innocent." The reunion was emotional. Margaret shared that she too had faced hard times. After the family separation, she fell into depression and ended up living on the streets for a few years, until she was taken in by a social program. "It seems this was our fate," Eleanor remarked, holding her mother's wrinkled hand. "We both know the harshness of the streets." Sophia, who was watching the scene from the doorway, noticed something familiar in Margaret's behavior. Her years of medical experience raised a red flag. "Mom," she called gently, "do you have regular medical checkups?" Margaret shook her head. "It's been a while since I've seen a doctor." Sophia insisted on a full examination. The results revealed a serious but treatable heart condition. With the right treatment, you'll still have many years to meet your grandchildren, Sophia assured her. William, upon returning from a meeting with investors, found the room transformed. Eleanor was radiant with happiness, chatting animatedly with her mother about the babies, while Sophia organized a treatment plan. "William," Eleanor called, her eyes shining, "come meet my mother." The encounter was surprisingly natural. Margaret, with her simplicity and life wisdom, won William over immediately. "Take good care of my girl," she asked, squeezing his hand with surprising strength. "Always," William promised, sitting beside Eleanor. That night, after Margaret was settled, in a nearby room to begin her treatment, Eleanor shared childhood memories with William. She spoke about how her mother worked as a cleaner to pay for her education, about the sacrifices she made so her daughter could study medicine. "She never doubted me," Eleanor said, emotional. "Even when everyone turned their backs, she always said the truth would come out." The moment was interrupted by an urgent call. It was William's lawyer, with surprising news. Elizabeth had sought legal action to report irregularities committed by Nathaniel at Thompson Technologies. "She's willing to testify," the lawyer informed. "She claims to have evidence not only of the fertility test manipulation, but also of an embezzlement scheme Nathaniel has been running for years." William could hardly believe it. Why this sudden change? According to her, the pregnancy made her rethink many things, and it seems she discovered some of Nathaniel's activities that left her disturbed. Thompson Technologies was buzzing with the new revelations. Elizabeth, in an exclusive interview, exposed Nathaniel's entire scheme. Documents proved he had diverted millions to offshore accounts using shell companies and fraudulent contracts. "I can no longer be complicit in this," declared Elizabeth, a protective hand on her belly. "My child deserves to be born in an environment of truth and integrity." Nathaniel, cornered by the evidence, tried to flee the country, but was stopped by federal police at the airport. The proof was undeniable. Years of financial manipulation, blackmail and fraud had come to light. At the hospital, William monitored the events with a mix of relief and concern. The board of Thompson Technologies called an emergency meeting to reverse his suspension, but his attention was focused on something far more important. Eleanor had gone into premature labor. "It's too soon," she whispered, frightened, as the contractions intensified. Dr. Harrison was urgently summoned. "We'll have to perform a C-section now," he announced. "The babies are under stress, especially the middle one." The operating room transformed into a command center. Sophia coordinated a team of specialists, each prepared to care for one of the triplets as soon as they were born. Margaret waited, in the chapel praying tirelessly. William, gowned and at Eleanor's side, held her hand tightly. "We're in this together," he whispered, kissing her forehead. The procedure was intense. The first baby, a girl, was born crying loudly. The second, the boy who would need the transplant, came next, more fragile but fighting. The third, another girl, completed the trio minutes later. "They're perfect," Eleanor murmured, exhausted but happy as the doctors worked quickly to stabilize the newborns. It was then that Nathaniel, having negotiated his temporary release, appeared at the hospital. His face was haggard, a far cry from the arrogant executive of days past. "I came to do what's right," he announced, surprising everyone. "I'm available for the transplant. No conditions." William studied his former friend's face, searching for signs of manipulation, but all he saw was defeat and perhaps a flicker of remorse. "Why?" he asked simply. Nathaniel looked at the babies in the NICU, his gaze lingering on the little one who would need his help. "Because some things are bigger than our fights," he replied, "and because I'm going to be a father too. I couldn't live with myself if I denied help to a child." Elizabeth also appeared at the hospital but kept her distance. Through her lawyer, she sent a letter to William asking for forgiveness for years of manipulation and lies. Along with it were documents proving her involvement in the scheme of falsified infertility tests, now part of the evidence against Nathaniel. Sophia, observing the whole situation, remarked to her brother, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find your humanity." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. While the triplets fought for their lives in the NICU, a task force mobilized to ensure everything was ready for the transplant as soon as the baby was strong enough. William split his time between the hospital and the company, which was gradually returning to normal under his leadership. But his priorities had drastically changed. The first action he took upon resuming the presidency was to create a substantial fund for neonatal health research. 3 weeks after the triplets were born, life at the hospital had settled into its own rhythm. Eleanor, now recovered from childbirth, spent her days between the NICU and the medical refresher courses Sophia had organized. Her medical license had been restored thanks to the efforts of Professor Beatrice and a team of lawyers. The babies thrived in different ways. Alice, the eldest, already showed strength and personality, crying loudly when she wanted attention. Michael, the middle child, though more fragile, surprised the doctors with his resilience. And Laura, the youngest, was the calmest, observing everything with curious eyes that reminded everyone of her mother's. "They're fighters," remarked Margaret, who was recovering well from her own heart treatment. She had become a constant presence in the NICU, singing old lullabies to her grandchildren. William completely reorganized his life. He turned a NICU room into a makeshift office, running Thompson Technologies between visits to his children. The company, after the scandal with Nathaniel, underwent a deep restructuring. The new, more diverse and ethical board unanimously approved the creation of the Thompson Medical Research Institute. "I never imagined I'd find purpose through so much chaos," William confided to Sophia one afternoon as they watched Eleanor bathe Alice. "Sometimes we need to lose control to find what truly matters," replied his sister, who had requested a transfer to St. Clair's Hospital to be closer to the family. The big day of the transplant was approaching. Michael was finally strong enough for the procedure, and Nathaniel kept his word, undergoing all the necessary tests and preparations. On the eve of the surgery, Eleanor encountered Nathaniel in the hospital hallway. The former executive seemed smaller without his expensive suits, wearing only a hospital gown. "Thank you," said Eleanor, surprising him, not for the transplant, but for showing that there's still hope for redemption. Nathaniel lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "I don't deserve gratitude. I've done terrible things." "Yes, you have," Eleanor interrupted gently, "but now you're doing something extraordinary. This is how we begin to make amends." The conversation was cut short by Elizabeth, who arrived for her prenatal appointment. Her 5-month belly was already visible, and her face carried the weight of the past weeks. The investigations into her involvement in Nathaniel's schemes were ongoing, but her cooperation with the authorities had earned her some leniency. "Eleanor," Elizabeth called hesitantly, Can I see the babies?" Eleanor exchanged a glance with William, who had just arrived. After a moment of silence, she nodded. "Come with me." In the neonatal ICU, Elizabeth gazed at the triplets with tear-filled eyes. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Forgive me and for everything." "Forgiveness is a process," William replied, surprising everyone with his calm. "It begins when we choose to be better people." That night, as the babies slept under the watchful eyes of the nurses, Eleanor and William walked along the beach near the hospital. It was the same beach where it all began, where a woman invisible to society had saved a man who had everything except what truly mattered. The day of the transplant dawned with unexpected serenity. Michael was carefully prepped by the medical team, his curious little eyes following every movement around him. Eleanor, wearing her doctor's coat for the first time in years, oversaw every detail of the procedure alongside Sophia. "It's strange to be on this side now," Eleanor remarked, adjusting the stethoscope around her neck. As both a doctor and a mother, Sophia smiled, squeezing her hand. "You've always been both. You were just waiting for the right moment to bring those parts of yourself together." The procedure went smoothly. Nathaniel, true to his word, was an exemplary donor. When it was all over, he asked for just one thing: to be able to visit Michael occasionally to follow his progress. Not as part of the family, he quickly clarified, just as someone who wishes him well. William, after some thought, agreed. Everyone deserves a chance to do the right thing, even if it's late. The days that followed were filled with intense observation. Michael responded well to the transplant, his tiny vital signs gradually improving. Alice and Laura, as if sensing their brother's recovery, also thrived, gaining weight and strength. Margaret, now fully recovered from her heart surgery, became the grandmother all the hospital staff adored. She handed out coffee and words of comfort to other parents in the NICU, sharing the wisdom only a life of overcoming challenges can bring. "You know, dear," she said to Eleanor one afternoon, "when you left home that day, after the scandal at college, I thought I'd lost you forever. Now I see fate was just weaving a longer path to our happiness." Professor Beatrice also became a constant presence at the hospital. After Eleanor's rehabilitation, she started a project to review other cases of students unfairly expelled from college. "Your story opened many doors, Eleanor," she explained, "not just for you, but for others who also needed justice." One afternoon, as Eleanor made her rounds in the NICU, now as a volunteer doctor, she found William quietly contemplating Michael's incubator. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, embracing him from behind. "How unpredictable life is," he replied. "A few months ago, I was a man who believed I'd lost everything. Now I realize I was just preparing to gain what truly matters." Eleanor smiled, watching the 3 babies sleeping peacefully. Alice, with her fists always clenched as if ready to take on the world. Michael, growing stronger each day, his tiny body winning battles many adults would fear. And Laura, with that serene gaze that seemed to carry all the wisdom of the universe. "They're our miracle," whispered Eleanor. "You're our miracle," William corrected. "You're the one who saved me on that beach, not just physically, but by restoring my ability to believe in goodness, in true love." At that moment, Sophia walked into the NICU with Michael's latest test results. Her smile said it all before. She even spoke. The transplant had been a complete success. The little warrior was officially out of danger. The news spread quickly through the hospital. Staff who had followed the family's entire saga came to celebrate. Margaret organized a small party in the waiting room, complete with cake and her special coffee. 6 months had passed since Michael's successful transplant. The beach house, once Eduardo's lonely refuge, now overflowed with life. The triplets were growing up healthy, filling the rooms with laughter and tears, turning each day into a new adventure. Eleanor divided her time between caring for the babies and her new job at the Thompson Medical Research Institute. Her unique life experience made her especially attuned to the needs of the most vulnerable patients, and her outreach program for the homeless was revolutionizing the local healthcare system. "Sometimes I catch myself thinking," she said to William one morning while nursing Laura, "how so many people on the streets have stories like mine. Wasted talents, lives cut short by injustice." William, who was rocking Alice to sleep, nodded thoughtfully. Thompson Technologies had transformed under his new vision. Beyond the institute, the company now ran a vocational training program for those in social vulnerability, offering not just jobs but a real chance to start over. Margaret, who had fully recovered from her heart troubles, had moved into a nearby home. Every morning she arrived early to help with the babies, bringing with her the aroma of fresh coffee and stories of her own journey of resilience. "Every scar we carry," she often said, "is a lesson we've learned. The important thing is not to let them harden our hearts." Sophia remained a cornerstone of the family's life. As the medical director of the institute, she implemented innovative treatment protocols, always seeking ways to make healthcare more accessible to everyone. One afternoon, as the whole family gathered on the beach house porch, Elizabeth appeared unexpectedly. Her son with Nathaniel had been born 2 months prior. A healthy boy she was raising alone, while the father served his sentence in semi-open custody. "I came to say goodbye," she announced. "I'm moving to the countryside, starting over far from all this." Eleanor, holding Michael in her arms, stepped closer to her. "You'll always be welcome to visit. The children deserve to know every part of their story, even the hardest ones." Elizabeth looked down at the baby in her arms, silent tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being better than I ever was." That night, After the children had fallen asleep, William found Eleanor on the same beach where it had all begun. The spot where his jet ski had failed was marked by a small buoy, a constant reminder of the day fate changed their course. "Let's get married here," William suddenly proposed, kneeling in the sand. "Right on this very spot where you saved me." Eleanor smiled, her green eyes sparkling under the moonlight. "Are you sure? Wouldn't you prefer something more sophisticated?" he finished, laughing. "No. I want it to be here, where an extraordinary woman taught me that true wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in the ability to see beauty where others see only misery." The wedding plans mobilized the entire family. Sophia insisted on handling the arrangements herself, transforming the beach into a magical setting. Margaret prepared special treats, blending traditional recipes with the fine delicacies she had learned to appreciate in her new life. Professor Beatrice brought a special surprise. All of Eleanor's former classmates who had been unfairly pushed out of medicine were being reinstated thanks to the tireless investigative work she continued to pursue. The wedding day dawned with an extraordinarily blue sky. The beach had been transformed into a scene that blended elegance with simplicity. Tropical flowers adorned a rustic altar made of driftwood, and white chairs lined the sand, creating a natural aisle leading to the ocean. The triplets, now 9 months old, were the center of attention. Alice, wearing a little white dress with blue ribbons, practiced her first steps with Sophia's help. Michael, strong and healthy, sported a tiny suit matching his father's. Laura, as serene as ever, watched everything with her green eyes. Identical to her mother's, wearing a dress Margaret had sewn especially for the occasion. Among the guests were people from all walks of life. Executives from Thomson Technologies sat beside homeless individuals Eleanor had treated over the years. Renowned doctors chatted with local fishermen. It was a celebration that transcended social barriers, just like the love that had inspired it. Nathaniel, serving his sentence under semi-open conditions, received special permission to attend. He kept to himself, but his eyes shone with emotion as he watched Michael, the little fighter he had helped save. When the music began to play, everyone turned toward the start of the sandy aisle. Eleanor appeared radiant, wearing a simple yet elegant dress that floated with the ocean breeze. Margaret escorted her, both with tears in their eyes. William, waiting at the altar, felt his heart race. There stood the woman who had transformed his life, who had taught him the true meaning of wealth and love. Vows were exchanged to the sound of the waves. Eleanor spoke about second chances and miracles disguised as tragedy. William promised to be not just a husband, but a partner in the mission to make the world a fairer and more humane place. During the celebration that followed, Sophia gave an emotional speech. "Today we don't just celebrate a union, but the victory of love over prejudice, of truth over lies, of hope over despair." The Thomson Medical Research Institute announced during the festivities the creation of a special scholarship program for low-income medical students named after Eleanor. By late afternoon, as guests danced on the sand and the triplets slept, in the arms of their godparents, Eleanor and William walked to the edge of the sea. "Look," she pointed to the horizon, "that's where you were when I found you. And there," he indicated a spot on the beach, "was where your tarp shelter stood." "Who would have thought?" Eleanor smiled. "That day would change so many lives." William hugged her, watching the sun set on the horizon. "You know what I learned? From you, that sometimes we need to lose everything to find what truly matters." The last rays of sunlight painted the sky pink and gold as the ocean breeze carried promises of bright futures. There, on that beach that had witnessed so many transformations, a new story was beginning, not just for Eleanor and William, but for all whose lives they had touched and would continue to touch. And so, between the sea and the sky, between the past and the future, between tears and smiles, one truth was confirmed. True love knows no